America was born in the age of enlightenment, but we live now in the age of entitlement. And I don't mean people who have hit hard times and might actually need our help, but I do mean our political class, those members of the 1% who think we owe them something. And this time I mean someone very in particular, U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder. I'm Steve Green, this is Trifecta, and let's bring on Scott Ott and Bill Whittle and see what happens when a member of the political 1% of the 1% lets the mask slip off just a little bit. Gents, Eric Holder was speaking before Al Sharpton's National Action Network, which, by the way, takes in over $3 million a year, according to Wikipedia. And do you know what Holder had to say to his audience? He complained, he whined, he pretty much lied. Let's go to the clip here.
Pleased to note that the last 5 years have been defined by significant strides and by lasting reforms, even in the face of unprecedented, unwarranted, ugly, and divisive adversity. And if you don't believe that, you look at the way, and forget about me. You look at the way the Attorney General of the United States was treated yesterday by a House committee. Had nothing to do with me. Forget that. What Attorney General has ever had to deal with that kind of treatment? Right.
Somebody call the ambulance. And it seems almost unfair to mention that Richard Nixon's Attorney General, John Mitchell, went to prison, and rightly so, for his involvement in Watergate. And you know what? Let us set aside the movie made a few years ago fantasizing about the assassination of President Bush while he was still in office. Scott, tell me, after being held in contempt by Congress 2 years ago and getting no action on that whatsoever, what does Eric Holder deserve? Our pity or something else?
I think one of those nice gold clocks that you put on a mantle when you retire somebody, you hand that to them and let them go. I think that's what he deserves more than anything. It is amazing to me that the degree to which this administration believes that it wakes up on a brand new planet every day. The fact that he would say, unprecedented. It was unprecedented, as if he'd never read anything in American history, as if he'd never, watched YouTube and seen what had happened to any of his predecessors. It's not driven by any sort of partisan politics or racism that most Americans are wondering what's happening to their country. It's driven by the fact that we know what the country's supposed to be like, and it's changing. And our government now seems more like our enemy than our friend in many ways. No wonder people are upset about that. By the way, one last thing. I really appreciate the name of Al Sharpton's National Action Network, because we used to call my grandmother Nan, which is a short form of nanny. And what better place for Attorney General Eric Holder to speak than at the NAN meeting?
Well, I'm glad you brought up partisanship, so we're going to get to that in just a minute here. Bill, it's easy to pick on Eric Holder because he's been such a divisive Attorney General, no matter what you believe he's done right or wrong. But it's not just him, is it? And it's not just Democrats. Would you say that the establishment GOP's treatment of the Tea Party is just another symptom of the exact same sense of entitlement, but this time on the right?
Well, the Tea Party hasn't broken any laws and doesn't disparage the rule of law on a daily basis. So I don't see how there's any kind of comparison at all, other than to say it is true that there is inside the Beltway this sense of immunity and we must protect our jobs at all costs. And certainly seems to me to be the key Republican position is better that we individuals stay in a minority forever than we win elections with other guys. There's no question to me that's what the Republican attitude in Washington seems to be. But I just have to go back to Eric Holder for a second. He says unprecedented. Yeah. Forget about me, unprecedented look at the Attorney General. What he's saying to that group of people is he says they're being mean to me because I'm black. That's exactly what he's saying. Let's not mince words. It's what he's exactly saying to this group. He's trying to claim that there's a level of disrespect being directed at him because he's black. But the level of disrespect being directed to him is not because it's black. It's because he's the worst Attorney General in the history of the country. It's because he's the most incompetent, divisive, tyrant who has utter contempt for the rule of law. It's because Attorney General Eric Holder himself said, we're not going to prosecute the Black Panthers because I'm not going to prosecute my people. We're all your people, Eric. I'm not going to call you Attorney General. I'm not going to call you Mr. Holder. We're all your people, Eric. You represent the people of the United States. You don't get to selectively choose which laws you're going to enforce and which laws you're not going to enforce based on your racial preferences and the preferences of your buddy. And for you to get up there and claim that the only reason that people are mean to you is because you're black is some more of this kind of sort of controversial subterfuge we see all the time. The reason you're the Attorney General is because you're black. You want to cut to the chase, there's the chase. You're incompetent, you don't understand the law, you don't know how to defend it. So this kind of thing, I'm over it, I'm done with it, and the only response to it, Steve, is to call it for what it is, put it out there on the table, and make sure everybody knows this is exactly what it is. I'm not afraid of these people anymore.
Yeah, you know, folks, Darrell Issa has to surrender his committee chairmanship at the start of the new Congress in January 2015. But I can think of another Californian who I would like to see take his place in grilling members of this administration. All right, you know, out there in the real America, there are two parties, Democrat and Republican, and we disagree on some fundamental issues. But in the past, and I think even today, we could usually manage to sit down together and hammer out our differences. But in Washington, there's really only one party. It's the insider party, and if there's ever been a case of us against them in American politics, it's Washington versus the rest of the country. It's just a coincidence that we're taping this segment on April 15 on tax day. But whether you're a Democrat or Republican out there in the real America, ask yourself if those guys in the insider party deserve everything they get from you, or maybe, just maybe, ask yourself how loudly they'd whine if we really turned up the criticism. For Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, I'm Steve Green.